So again, just quickly, and I'm sorry I don't have the copy where I can put it up on the screen, because this is, I actually thought I had it here, but Java Homework Fall, that's just the one that you've got now. All I did was rename it, but like I said, I put it someplace, but I'll find where it is. So what I've done for those of you who are in class, you now have a hard copy, and I've got about 6 or 7 left. So if you're not here today, just come talk to me. And I've got the programs that'll be assigned for chapters 9, really from 9 through about 14. The one in 15 we'll just do as a class. That's on recursion. The one for chapter 16 on the databases we'll do as a class. Believe me, you wouldn't want to be assigned that one. All right, databases in Java are hard. Okay. All right. And when you look at from the handout I gave you, chapter 9, look at this. You give us 3 frickin' programs assigned. Yeah, they're all based off of each other. So what we'll do in class is we'll do this bank account and savings account program, and savings account will inherit from bank account. And that'll show you how you have to create an employee class very similar to the one we just looked at in the C# class. And from there you'll have to make production worker, shift supervisor, and team leader classes. All right. All right, then we go into exceptions. We've already done some work with exceptions. But my hope is, and the plan is, that after we get done with chapter 10, every program you do after that will include exception handlers. All right? In other words, if I am asking you for a salary, S-A-L-A-R-Y, how much somebody makes, and I put hello in there, your program should handle it. It shouldn't blow up. Okay? So we'll do that in chapter 10. Then in chapter 11, we start to get into GUIs. And my God, look, oh my God, no, not Joe's again. Yeah. We'll let you work on that one. Yeah. So we'll start doing some GUI stuff. And then we'll go a little bit more advanced GUI, and we'll actually create a simple shopping cart in chapter 12. We'll do that as a class. All right, then in chapter 13, we go through applets. If you don't know what an applet is, basically everything that you do in this class, in the beginning class, and everything in the advanced class except for chapter 13, they're all Java applications. An application has a main, etc. An applet doesn't have a main. An applet runs under a browser. So we'll do that. Chapter 14 starts to talk a little bit more about GUIs, but a different way of doing GUIs. So there's a good chance that we'll only have assigned work through chapter 13. All right? All right. So that said, I want to show you a couple things. If you would please, just get into Eclipse. Just start up Eclipse. Don't start up a new project. Don't do anything, but just start up Eclipse. John, I'm just going to have them, before we even do any updates or anything, we should be able, would it hurt to have them create an emulator before we do the updates? I mean, that really shouldn't matter, should it? Well, we'll do it the other way. That's fine. I'll just to be sure. All right. Okay. So, what we've done so far in here, whenever we've created a brand new project, okay, you're used to going in and doing a file, new, and Java project. All right, and there's other ways of doing it too. There's, etc. But what we'll get to when we get into the Android stuff, I don't want you to do this right now, okay? But I want to show you what will happen. We have to change some settings on your machines first. But I just want to show you what we'll be doing. So instead of choosing Java project, we'll choose Android application. Again, don't do that. All right, so we'll do that. And you'll notice immediately that it looks different. It'll ask for a name, so let's just say we'll do our famous tip calculator. All right. So notice a couple things when I name it. That's the name that literally, and you can change this later, but that's the name that by default, if I was to put this out on the App Store, that's the name it's going to have. Does that make sense? All right. Then notice the project name, because project names can't have spaces. I think they can have underscores, but they can't have spaces. All right, and it might be hyphens too. I don't know. All right, and notice it comes in here and says this project name is only used by Eclipse, but must be unique within the workspace. All right. Well, if I came through here and called something geometry class or whatever, I'd get an error message. All right. All right. Now, package name. We're going to do this very similar to the way we've done this in the past. So we'll say something like edu.blackhawk. You know, you'll have your students thing, but I'll just say .jscott, something like that. Okay? All right. Then we go through this, and I want you, again, this may or may not make a whole lot of sense right now, but you're just seeing it now. Okay? So this says, what's the minimum required Android software development kit that we expect to use for this project? Okay? And notice if I hit the down arrow here, there's a lot of them. It goes all the way back to version 1, and it goes all the way down to at least what's on here. All right, and there's newer ones than this. I have not updated my system, but we're just going to keep it the way that it is with the way mine is right now. All right, but the point is, so let's say that I did this. Let's literally say that I chose here Android 1.0. The good news is I can create my application now, and it can be used by anybody running any version of Android. Does that make sense? Because I went all the way back to version 1. That's the good news. The bad news is there have been a lot of updates since then. So a lot of the stuff that you did in 1.0, you are doing it totally different now. And even more important than that, a lot of things that are only available in the last few versions were not available back then. Sometimes they put kludges in there where you can do something, sometimes they don't. So bottom line, you may have noticed that what it came up with was Froyo. All right, which is as a starting point. If you haven't heard the story, they always name this after either candy or treats or whatever. So there's donut, eclair, etc. That's where all that comes from. And Froyo is frozen yogurt. All right, but the newest ones, like Lollipop, is the newest. And there's been different versions of Lollipop, which started with 5.0. All right, so there are things on here, and in fact, I've got this. I wanted to show it to you. And I can give you the latest and the greatest. Give me a second here. Okay. You don't have to do what I'm about to show you right now. But if I come out here, and I go out to http://developer.android.com/about/dashboards. You don't have to do this. And if you ever did, you'd only want to do it probably once anyway. This shows the percentage of people using the different versions. See that? So notice Froyo, they don't even show anything earlier than that. So what they're saying is basically everybody has gone up to at least 2.2. Now, that's the good news. What's the bad news? Well, Lollipop hasn't had like a lot of universal acceptance right now at 5.4%. All right. One thing about, they've done studies on this. Normally when iOS updates their operating system, within 2 weeks, 90% of people have downloaded it. It's not the same. That's not how it is here. But by and large, and what I'm saying is a generalization. So if you say, oh, what are you, a Mac person? No. But typically, there's a lot less fixes that they put in when they have an iOS update as opposed to when they have an Android update. All right, that's not always true, but quite often that's true. And but again, with all this stuff, it's not impossible that you've got an older version of something that you're running and you update your operating system and now your program doesn't work. And I will tell you, John can attest to this. It's a lot more like that in iOS. Because in iOS, it's not just the operating system, which we're using Yosemite in there that you've got to worry about updating, but it's the IDE that they keep changing also. And we've done that where people have updated and stuff just doesn't work now. All right, and where you used to have used a question mark in your code. Now you can't use it. And then the next version, you got to use it again. And I don't know why they do that. They keep saying they're trying to make it easier to use. I don't know. But you'll notice that a fairly recent version, 4.4 KitKat, all right, is being used by basically, over 40%. Okay. So that's what a lot of people baseline their stuff at. You'll also notice, for example, like Jelly Bean. So these are basically, I'm not going to call them fixes. You can call them updates, upgrades, or whatever you want. The API is the application program interface. And you notice there were 3 of them. All right. There were 3 of them for Jelly Bean. So it started at 4.1, then it went to 4.2, then it went to 4.3. And you can find this stuff all over the place. One thing I will mention to you, just so you hear this, is developer.android.com. That's kind of your window into most everything that's in here for Android. All right? And why am I telling you this? Because you can go out to android.com, all right, and it's totally a different site. Okay, so it's developer.android.com. Oh wow, is there a person wearing a watch in there? Oh, it's a Google watch, I guess. All right. Okay, so just so you've seen that stuff. So this says that's the minimum required to run your program. That's what your target is. So that's what you expect most people are going to be using. All right, and quite often the one that's the target is, in fact, I think it always is going to be the same one that you'll compile it with. All right, and the theme, it's not that important a thing when you first start, but you'll notice there's a couple. I should say there's a few. None, hollow dark, hollow light with dark action bar. As Android has gone on, they've changed the color scheme a little bit as far as how it looks when you first start doing something. Okay? All right, so if I was running through this right now, and let's just call it, I'm going to just say Jeff's tip calculator. Okay, so if I was doing it like that, again, I'm not asking you to, but I'd probably come in and set it up, like I said, to, I don't know, maybe to 4.0. All right, I'd leave that the way it is, I'd leave that the way it is and that, and I'd click next. Okay? This does a whole bunch of internal stuff right here that we really and truly don't have to worry about. All right? So we just click next again. This, and it doesn't sound like it's a big thing, this is the default icon that you're going to have for your app. So if I wanted to change it to something else, okay, literally I could sit there and say, rather than launcher icon, so for example, I just want to show you this. Let's see. I'm doing this off the top of my head, so the chances of it working with no problems, well, we'll see. How's that? Can't even spell Google, so that's not a good start. All right, so there's, okay, I'm going to grab that one. It's as good as any. Now, just save it. Desktop, that's fine. Okay. So if I come in here and click on here, and I go to the one I just showed you, all right, see what happened? And I only need one. This is a little bit different the way you do it in iOS. But what that means is when I run the program, that's the icon that's going to be associated with it. Okay? All right. So I click next again, and this is what you're going to see. Virtually everything that we do in here is going to be a blank activity, just so you know. We get in and we talk about fragments, but not until the spring class. Okay? But notice blank activity with fragments. It doesn't literally draw those dashed lines, but you'll learn what that means later. If you want to start with nothing, full screen, master detail, navigation, and tabbed. But for what we're going to do literally all the time in here, it'll be blank activity. So we create that. All right, we'll click next, and it says activity name. We'll just keep the default. We'll keep the default there. There's a reason I'm going through and showing you this before we're doing anything. because this is the project that you get right out of the box. Okay? And I moved my stuff around, so this is going to look a little weird. It's still working. Okay. So right now, hopefully you can see that little icon right there. That's the one that I chose. All right, it gives you by default the name that I put in here, Jeff's Tip Calculator. I'd recommend when you're naming things like that, don't put special characters in there, like an apostrophe or anything. Blank spaces are okay in the actual name. Remember, that's the name that it's going to appear on in the App Store. All right, but I wouldn't use anything else. And notice we get by default. It's not called a text box anymore. It's called a text view. You're going to have to learn all different, nomenclature? You know, the way that things are called. All right. Not only that, if you look over here, there's your properties window. It's much different than the way the properties window is set up in Visual Studio. All right. Most people will tell you once they get used to it, it's not that bad, but it's a pain in the butt to get used to it. Okay. All right. The other thing too, just so you know, John and I have talked about this a little bit. What we have in here is we're running it under Eclipse. Right now, the recommended IDE, the recommended integrated development environment that you use for for Android is not Eclipse. It's something that Google came up with, because Google basically is in charge of all this stuff. And they've created their own IDE that's called Android Studio. All right. There is a chance that this summer, because Terry already asked me about that when he's building the virtual desktop, supposedly you can run either one. You can have them both loaded. But I have read stuff online where they can fight with one another, for lack of better words. All right. So if I have them both, if they're both up here in fall, then I will just tell you we're just going to be doing Android Studio. All right. The good news about that is you'd be learning the latest and the greatest. The bad news is it's yet another IDE. So it's Visual Studio and etc. Now, if I don't want this anymore, I can just remove it. I'm not going to do that right now, but just so you see it. Now, for example, with all this stuff, so I want a button. I can either do that and just drag it. There's a button, so I can do that. Or I can take a button and I can drag it over here. See that? In both ways, I got the button. Well, I don't like it there. Well, I just move it down a little bit type of thing. All right? So you're going to notice that these are going to be GUI, and they're going to be GUI right away. But it's not where you take this, oh yeah, and then we double click on it, nothing happened. Okay, because you're going to write code differently in here. It'll be all done differently. Okay? And right now there's a few things that the system doesn't understand in here, and you may or may not be able to see that. There's one of those yellow triangles. And it says on the bottom, it's got a little error message. Don't worry about that, because we'll write stuff. And when you first start to create your interface, it'll look real funky on the screen. But when you go run it, it'll look a lot better. Okay? All right. Now, one more thing I want to mention, and that is, and again, John's the purveyor of these. He knows a lot more about them than I do. But in that cabinet that's back there, we do have 12 tablets. All right? Now, are we going to have more than 12 people? I don't know. There are 16 in the class right now. Now, are all 16 of those going to go through? I don't know. I really don't. If we have 12, then you would each get your own tablet, as far as I'm concerned, from day one. That said, they stay in this room. They're not mine. They belong to the program. They were purchased under the grant. And, so far it's been so good with everything, and there hasn't been a problem with it. But if somebody walks off with one, even accidentally, it's going to be my butt that gets put in a sling for it. All right, so before we do any of this, and I'm just going to go and close this right now, we're going to try to set up our machines. Okay, so let's say that you're at home and you don't have an Android device. Okay, well, what you can do is you can set up here what's called an emulator. All right, it's called an emulator here. It's called a simulator in iOS, but they both pretty much do the same thing. And what you do is you come in here. We're going to do this in just a second, but there's one more thing we have to do first. But you'll come in, and you'll go down to where it says under Window to Android Device Manager, and you'll click in here, and you'll notice I have one emulator right now. There it is. We'll talk about how to do this after the break, but I just tell it to start up. All right. We'll go over this stuff and what it means. If I click this scale to size and I remove all of it, all right, and I click launch, what's going to happen is it's going to launch the emulator, and you're going to see it then. All right. Once that launches, I can close this thing that's open right here. In fact, I think I should close this thing that's open right here. All right. So you'll see that in just a minute. I'll get another icon down here someplace. All right. And when that happens, all right, so when I actually come in here and start running this, you're going to see something that almost is supposed to look like a phone. All right, and it is, but it's a simulator, so you can't literally call out on it, but you can basically model as though you're calling out on it. You can do different things with it. If you're hooked up to one of the regular devices, I don't know, can they call out? If they no, I didn't think so. All right. Okay. But John will show you, too, that once you get those devices, the first thing he'll show you is how to use one of the games on it. And then I'll lose everybody for the rest of that period because you'll all be playing that game. All right, it's not Flappy Birds. All right, sorry. All right, there it is. Now, when I set that up, I took that where it asked me for some sizes and stuff. I removed all of it. So by default, it shows almost the entire screen. If I wanted to show something smaller, I can rerun it and change those sizes. We'll get into all that as we go on, but I just wanted to show you that. All right, and it is operational. I mean, it'll do certain things. Now it's warming up, so to speak, and the reason I'm telling you this is once we get these, next semester, once we get these working and everybody's working on this stuff, the first thing you should do is if you're going to be using the simulator, start it up before you do anything. It's that slow. Not only that, it's totally legit. You can leave, you can shut off the virtual desktop. So I can come up here and I can click that and I can leave this up and running. All right, was that Laura, I think, had the record. She left hers up for like 3 weeks. Yeah, and she said she never had a problem with it. I wouldn't recommend that. All right. Yes. Yeah. But now that I've got that, now I don't need this thing here anymore. So I can click that X, and that's gone. All right, and I still do have it up. Okay. That's when I run things. It's going to run on here unless I'm hooked up to a device. Okay. All right. Just click the X. Boom. It's gone now. All right. So now I don't know. I'm going to go based on what you think. I think if they had their settings set up like mine, it wouldn't break anything. But if we go too much further, that we might have some problems with it. Yeah, yeah. All right. So what I'd like everybody to do is, my guess is now all of you are basically, you're all about right there, correct? Okay. Again, your screen might look a little different than mine. I've got 10,000 files in here. But what I'd like you to do is go over to Window. So click Window and go down to Android SDK Manager. It'll take a second as it loads, and your screen will not look exactly like mine as far as what's highlighted and what's not highlighted, and what's installed and what's not installed. We're kind of fortunate, just so you know, we're kind of fortunate in that what Terry, the reason I'm able to do this right now is Terry Prindle, who's our virtual desktop engineer, decided this year. In the past, I could never have done this because he built the Android stuff for the second year people. He didn't build it for the first year people. He went and added it between your first and second years. But since you've got it now, I figured at least you could see it. Okay? And again, yours might look totally different as far as what's updated, what's there, what's not there, etc. But if you look at yours has not been updated since last August. Yours is pretty old. All right, when you think about it, it's what, I don't know, May, June, July, that's 9 months. And in operating system and stuff speak, there are a lot of stuff that can happen during that time. All right, So the reason I'm telling you that is you might have a lot more stuff over here that says not installed, etc. You might have a lot of checks, etc. And if you look on the screen here, you'll notice that right now, if I want to, by default, it thinks that if I tell it to, if I click that button, it'll install right now everything that it's got a check mark that's not installed. And if I click the delete, then anything that's got a check mark that already is installed, it'll uninstall. And the reason that stuff gets to be important is sometimes you can find that if you've got different versions of the operating system, they can kind of, for lack of a better word, bang into one another. And some stuff that's worked previously may not. But right now, since you have very little set up, I'm not sure if we ran this right now on yours exactly how much would or would not work, because we're going to create a simple project when we get back from break. Okay. Can they go up to 24.0.2 like I have, or does it skip that? Well, I'll tell you what then. Why don't we try this? We'll have everybody just try. Start up the emulator. We'll create an emulator. Take a break. Then we'll start the emulator up before the break. We'll come back after the break. Create a simple project with just a hello world in it. See if we can get theirs to run. Okay. All right. So what will end up happening eventually? How's that? Is you're going to come in here. And what John has found out, and I really appreciate all the work that he's done on it, is that you'll notice when it goes down, here's the newest, there's 22, there's 21, there's 20, there's 19, etc. And you'll notice as you go down, a lot of the stuff that's in there is available, but it's not installed. All right. First of all, why would you want older versions installed with newer versions? It really doesn't make a lot of sense typically to do that. All right. But there is some stuff that's at the bottom. The support library and stuff that by default you should have installed. Some of the stuff that's in here won't matter if it's installed or not. And you know, and I appreciate John being here, and he knows that, but I've leaned on him because I don't have a lot of hardware knowledge. Terry has a lot of hardware knowledge, but he doesn't have a lot of Eclipse knowledge, and has no desire to get a lot of Eclipse knowledge, because he's just got a lot of other stuff that he's got to be working on. All right, so we'll see if we can get this to work without it. So go ahead and just click the X that's up here to close it. And now we're going to go in Window, and we're going to go to Android Virtual Device Manager, which is the one right underneath it. Right? Now I've already got this built. Yours right now is just going to be gray. There's nothing inside of it because you haven't done it yet. All right? So go ahead and click Create. All right, and what I'm going to do instead of create is I'm going to click edit. All right. Now this is the emulator that I built. So let's just talk about a couple of the things that are in here. That's the name. Okay, no big thing right there. Again, it doesn't seem to like blank spaces and a lot of other stuff in the name. So this is a Nexus 1, so I just called it Nexus 1. Notice that I can emulate a lot of different devices. All right, and so this Nexus 1, by default, it's a 3.7 inch 480 by 800 HDPI. But notice I can go up to a 10, which is a 10 inch, etc. You can do some TV stuff. There's other stuff. Some of the stuff we've never even looked at in here. But what I'm going to ask that you choose is just the one that I've got, which is the Nexus. So click the down arrow. Name it whatever you want. Nexus 1 is fine. All right, so if you want to name it like I did, that's fine. And later, you know, when we get done with the semester, if it's next semester, if you still have that one there, I don't know, I don't think you would anyway, but if you did, you can always just remove that emulator. It's no big thing. All right, so for the device, again, click the drop down and find the Nexus 1. Okay. is where it'll get dicey because I don't know with the target if that's going to screw it up with what they're running or not. So we'll find out. So I take it that everybody's been able to do that one. So go to target, and you may or may not have this stuff showing in yours. When you click the down arrow, you may not have API level 21. I don't know. You do? All right. Then go ahead and choose it. Now the ARM stuff that's in here, notice if I go down here, there's ARM and there's Intel Atom. All right, and a lot of that is going to depend on the type of machine you're trying to be simulating. Right now, we'll just leave it at ARM. Okay. This one is what you think it would be. Hardware keyboard present. If I click that, then basically I can't use my regular keyboard. Okay. We'll just keep it on for right now. The skin, we've tried all sorts of different things, including no skin, and the system didn't seem to like it with no skin. You can go online and you can go out to Stack Overflow and a lot of other places because we've done this. And sometimes they'll say, oh, here's the ideal emulator. Just set it up like this. And you try it and it doesn't work. All right, so that might be the ideal emulator for them, and for us it's not. So we'll just set it to skin with dynamic hardware controls. The front camera is disabled because there isn't one. The back camera, there isn't one. This already all should be set up just like this. So you shouldn't have to change any of that stuff. And believe me, all sorts of tweaks have been done on this to try to see if we can get it to run better, etc. So if yours looks like it with all the stuff, if you put all the stuff in up to this point, it looks the same as this, then click, I don't know if yours says OK or it says start on it, but it should say one or the other, and click that. And that should go and create the emulator for you. Now I'm just going to click cancel because I didn't want to change anything. But ideally then when you get done, you're now going to have this in here on yours. Okay? And if you do, just click on it, make sure it's blue, and then just click the start button. Now when you look at the stuff, what's that? It's slow? Yes, it's very slow. Yeah, yours might take longer because it's the first time that you're configuring it. So I just want to show you this, and I'll wait. But if you look right here, notice if I click Scale Display to Real Size, notice if I click right there, the screen size, it grabbed that based off of what I chose in the emulator. Remember I chose the Nexus 1 3.7 inch? All right, so if I remove that, it's going to take up almost the whole screen. We'll leave it in there that time, just this time, just so you can see it. So I'll wait. We're not in any hurry. So when yours does come up eventually, click the start button, and then when it comes up and it looks like this, just click the launch button. There's all sorts, if you say, well, are you going to explain what all this stuff in here means? I know what most of it means, but I don't really feel like confusing you right now. You can go and you can go online and you can read where they say always click that wipe user data. Then you can go on to the next post and it says never ever click wipe user data, because people are running them on so many different platforms, and some people are hooked up to a device, some are not hooked up to a device, some people believe in this emulator, some people have an emulator set up for every one of those possibilities that you saw in there. So right now, if we run this and launch it like this, it's going to be about this size. All right, because it's simulating that phone. If we'd have chose that Nexus 10 inch, it would be a lot bigger because it's simulating a tablet as opposed, all right, to a phone. Okay. Okay, I want to try to answer Eric's question that's not on tape. He said when we save these. So let's see if I can. Okay, if I go, and you'll have to help me probably, but if I, you don't have to do this, but if I go to the D drive users, my name, Android, AVD, that's where it saves all that information. Okay? Now, why am I even showing you that? Because notice if I go into that file, it creates a pretty honking big file in here. See that? And sometimes when you start the simulator up or the emulator up, and you don't shut it down in a typical way, when you start it up again, it creates another one of these. And it might have 2 or 3 on there, but pretty soon you're running out of memory because you don't have that much space on your D drive where you're actually running these. So if that happens, you'll have to go in here and then manually remove that file. Now, that's probably not going to be an issue, but we'll see as we go on. But what I wanted you to realize is that's where it is. So if you go to d:\users, your user ID, .android/avd, that's where the information about your, and AVD is Android Virtual Device. All right, so that's where all that information is. I don't know if that's what you asked. All right. Okay. Okay. All right, so am I right in assuming everybody's here? Yes? Anybody not? All right, so I'm just going to click Launch. Sometimes it's going to come up and everything will be hunky-dory, as they say, and sometimes you're going to get what almost looks like an error message. See how that looks a little bit different now? All right. And also, if you look up on the screen here, I think this was the question that John had, but what it's showing you right here is when you create the different emulators, when you create the different emulators, and for some reason it doesn't, maybe you've done it incompletely, it's not all the information is there. It might say the red here, it failed to load. Click details, and then it'll show you what the problem is. If you just stay with one emulator right now, the one that we already have, should be. So again, you might say, well, that, you said it took a long time. I mean, that's up there. I saw it. It was there, etc. And it didn't take long. Yeah, but getting a program to run under this can take a real long time. All right. So what we'll do is we'll leave this, and it's 10:44. So let's take a break. We'll come back at 11, and we'll write just a real. First, we'll write the one that comes with the system. So you have just literally the hello world. But that'll give me a chance to go in and explain the different Android files to you. All right, so let's take a break. We'll come back again.